So 2 weeks ago, under the Andalusian sunshine, and after 5 years and 94 MotoGP races, it was Alex Marquez who took his first ever MotoGP victory. He knew that was his time as soon as his brother Mark crashed out of third place early on at turn 8. A second crash out of podium contention in the last 3 Grand Prix for Marc Marquez. A costly error for him as he was able to recover to 12th place, but he did hand the championship initiative back to Alex Marquez. We saw Fabio Quartararo leading a Grand Prix for the first time in 3 years. He put the Yamaha back on the podium for the first time since 2023. We're taking the spoils and taking the adulation of a massive home crowd was Alex Marquez, which means the 73 leads the World Championship by a single point coming into our 13-lap sprint, which will be lights out and on the way in just under half an hour's time. And trust us, we've already had some spectacular performances on Sprint Saturday so far here. At one of our most legendary and iconic venues, it's always great, particularly when the sun is shining, to be at the Bagnaia circuit in Le Mans. It can mean only one thing, it's the Michelin Grand Prix of France. Already a huge Saturday crowd have gathered for this morning's qualifying action, and they are set for what we hope is going to be another scintillating sprint over 13 laps. And there is plenty of anticipation. There is plenty of expectation ahead of this 13-lapper, because for the third time in his career, Fabio Quartararo produced yet another cracking lap this morning. Marc Marquez pinged in a 1:29.442. We thought that was pole position number 99 secured for the number 93. Not so. Just as it was at the Spanish Grand Prix in qualifying 2 weeks ago, Fabio Quartararo pulled out a lap that was something extra special on the factory Yamaha. And his all-time lap record of 1:29.324. What a lap it was. It had the roof raised here on the grandstands in Le Mans. It means the 26-year-old Frenchman, as we mentioned, will go from the front of the grid for the third time here in Le Mans. 2020, 2021, his previous pole laps here in Le Mans. And having waited 1,134 days in the retro pole position, he's now made it to in the space of 14 days. First time he's been back-to-back poles since Mugello and Catalunya, all the way back in 2021. Myself, Lewis, Jack Appleyard in the commentary box, and Bradley Smith this morning, we were all marvelling at just another phenomenal lap by factory Yamaha rider Fabio Quartararo. Of course, from pole in Jerez, he did briefly lead the sprint before he was all in. It was the win it or bin it policy, crashing out on the second lap. But Lewis, once again, Fabio Quartararo, raised eyebrows, raised the roof, chapeau as the factory Yamaha start back on pole with another incredible lap.
Whatever happens for the rest of this French Grand Prix weekend, he has done his home fans proud, but this is only the start of the weekend. Quartararo giving the fans what they came for this morning. He went all in the Saturday sprint in Jerez from pole position, because he wasn't sure when he would be sitting there again. Well, 2 weeks on, he's back there and says that he might perhaps leave a little bit more margin this afternoon. But when the emotion takes over and when the energy provided to him by 900,000 of his compatriots kicks in on the first lap of the sprint, surely Quartararo is going to be going for nothing other than a sprint victory. It's going to be tough for him, no question about that. Marc Marquez has looked in formidable form all weekend. It took something truly heroic to beat him this morning, and that's exactly what Quartararo delivered.
If fan power is going to propel Fabio Quartararo to more success here on Sprint Saturday, well, he's going to win this sprint by 5 seconds, because he has got the support of a massive, partisan, passionate home crowd. This was the pole lap. This was the fastest ever MotoGP lap around this Bagnaia circuit. It was always going to take something extraordinary to deny Marc Marquez after he put in that 1:29.442, and Fabio Quartararo duly delivered. Back-to-back poles, back-to-back incredible laps, and that's what it means to the Frenchman under the clear blue skies this morning. He'll be getting quite accustomed to this, won't he? It's now 3 successive front row starts for the number 20. Third he was in qualifying in Qatar. Pole position, of course, last time out. First time Fabio's been on the front row in 3 successive Grand Prix in 3 years. Catalonia, Sachsenring and Assen. The upgrades to the factory Yamaha have been brought here this weekend. A slightly revised engine spec for a bit more top-end performance. Works in 5th and 6th gear. A revised chassis. These small but positive steps clearly are bringing Yamaha and Quartararo back into contention.
With every weekend that goes by, we get further confirmation of Yamaha's progression. Admittedly, they know there are circuits coming up over the summer months which might not be quite so favourable to them, but they've got to make hay while the sun shines. And Fabio Quartararo, in a social media post after qualifying earlier on today, did describe it as one of his best ever laps, and I don't think any of us are in any mood to argue with that. Even Marc Marquez said he's riding in an incredible way.
He was trying his level best to calm expectations in Parc Ferme just after he'd spoken to Jack after that pole lap. The crowd were going absolutely wild. They really were already at fever pitch before noon this afternoon, and Fabio Quartararo was just saying, okay, yeah, it's only qualifying, it's going to be tough to beat the Ducatis in the sprint and in the main Grand Prix. Marc Marquez, as Lewis mentioned, it is the clear favourite in terms of race pace, particularly over the full 27 laps here tomorrow. Well, I'm delighted to welcome to Le Mans a man who knows what it takes to win around this Ducati circuit, because he did it previously himself in MotoGP and some of our epic battles in France. It is Sete Gibernau who joins Jack.
Yeah, he does indeed. I was just walking down pit lane and I thought, that has to be Sete Gibernau. As I walked closer, it was. I wasn't expecting to see you here.
So this handsome guy, young guy, that's got to be Sete.
Exactly. So, Sete, firstly, great to have you here, and what a race to come to. The grid is set up perfectly. I mean, Marc has been fantastic all weekend, but that lap from Fabio this morning means that we could have a real fight in our hands.
Well, we were talking about that this morning with Michelin. I'm here for Michelin. I've been helping Michelin out for many years, and they asked me to come here, and I'm always proud to come to Le Mans, and we're just seeing something great. I mean, Fabio, we know how good he is here, how strong he is, but we know what's going to happen with Marc. You know, he's got the pace, he's got everything, and when they ask me, I'm a little bit outside of racing, but I keep saying the only one that can beat Marc or avoid Marc winning the championship is Marc. So.
Of course, in your prime, you were having to go up against Valentino at the peak of his powers. It feels similar to these guys trying to beat Marc at the moment. I mean, what did it take, and what does it take to beat someone like Marc in such great form?
It's exactly what Pecco is going through. Pecco needs to try to close in himself, not look at what's going on outside of his pit. You know, it's very easy now to fall into the fact that all the energy is going into Marc's side, and it's difficult for Pecco. So I think now, in perspective from my side, I think the more you can isolate from everything and just focus on yourself is what's going to take you out of your own problems.
Just finally, before I let you go, quick prediction: who do you think is going to win the sprint?
Marc.
There we go. Easy.
Yeah.
Good to see you.
My pleasure, man. Take care.
Thanks, Jack. Thanks to two-time Le Mans MotoGP winner Sete Gibernau. He really had to think long and hard, didn't he, when Jack asked him who's going to win the sprint? Yeah, have a real long, hard think about that one, Sete. Clearly, well, his money is going on the 93. What about Maverick Vinales? Once again leading the KTM Challenge, 5th fastest. He has had a sprint podium here last year from the front row for Aprilia, Grand Prix podiums here for Suzuki and for Yamaha in the Premier class. Can he put the KTM on the box and maybe potentially in the medal positions at the end of this 13 laps? Vinales qualified at 5th, of course, in Tech 3's, a crucial home Grand Prix. When you look at where the other KTMs were qualifying for the 3rd time in 3 races, Pedro Acosta bringing up the rear in Q2, 3rd race in a row. Acosta's qualified 12th. There was pretty much half a second between Vinales and Acosta at the end of Q2. Brad Binder will start 13th, and Bastianini's soft tyre woes continue. He's 18th. So once again, Lewis, by far, head and shoulders clear of the KTM pack was Top Gun.
And he's doing a top job so far, and from the longer runs that we saw earlier on in the weekend, he's got the pace not only to stay in 5th, but potentially go forwards from there. So keep a close eye on Top Gun on what is, of course, a very fast starting KTM, and a long run up to the Dunlop chicane, which will have Fermin Aldeguer well and truly in the middle of the action as well. Goes to show you how good Fermin Aldeguer has been this weekend. Fourth almost feels like something of a mild disappointment. Went onto the front row of the grid. He was second when he crashed into Dunlop. Of course, we'll never know whether he had any capacity to improve on that 129.776. We've been saying for quite some time now, a big result is coming for Fermin Aldeguer. Is today the day?
Yeah, the 20-year-old Spaniard, he is catching the eye. He was actually as high as second in that Q2 session this morning before he took a late tumble at turn 3. It's always great to see, isn't it, in Le Mans. Are we going to get our first ever crowd in excess of 300,000 fans over the course of the weekend? It's been a pretty tough French Grand Prix experience so far for Frankie Morbidelli, the 30-year-old Italian. He was down yesterday morning at turn 8. He was also on the floor in Q2 himself at turn 6. He's going to start from 9th place on the grid. He was also down this morning in our FP2 session, a rather slow speed and a red-faced get-off right on the edge of the gravel in turn 7 for Morbidelli. Not exactly a lover of Le Mans. He's never finished higher than 7th in 7 previous Grand Prix starts here. The Italian goes from 9th on the grid.
Can't imagine the vibes are too good whatsoever within that VR46 camp this weekend. Morbidelli 9th, and Fabio Di Gianantonio, his teammate, down in a season's low of 17th on the grid. So he's certainly going to have to go some to claw himself into the points this afternoon. You saw Pedro Acosta there, as Matt mentioned, 12th on the grid for the 3rd consecutive weekend. And behind him on the grid, out-qualified for the first time in his MotoGP career, is this man, Ayagura, 19th on the grid and playing some serious catch-up after a crash in Q1.
Yeah, he said pre-weekend, not exactly a big fan of this Bugatti circuit here on the outskirts of Le Mans. Unfortunately, that's a pre-weekend prediction has come true. A fall yesterday at turn 7, a fall this morning rather, turn 7, followed then by another crash in Q1, which briefly brought out the red flags. Lowest qualifying of the year so far for Agura. Yeah, just quickly coming back to Gianantonio as well, just to emphasise the point of how much the Italian has struggled here this weekend. His lowest qualifying in 31 starts since the San Marino Grand Prix all the way back in 2023. Just can't get the bike stopped, can't get it turned, just all at sea. No front confidence whatsoever for Digio.
He's Joan Mir on the Honda HRC Castrol machine. He also went down earlier on today, but he and the Honda squad will be praying Joan to bring the bike home to the checkered flag this afternoon. Well, he's seen the checkered flag this season, which admittedly has only been on 4 of the 10 possible occasions. He's always brought it home in the points, including 3 of the sprints he's competed in so far. Now,
of course, all the Yamaha headlines are being hogged right now by Fabio Quartararo after his back-to-back poles in Jerez and in Le Mans. But we should mention another great performance by another YZR M1 star this morning in qualifying, Jack Miller, 8th fastest for Pramac Yamaha. Great to see Miguel Oliveira back in action as well. I wonder what the prospects are for the Aussie in this 13-lap sprint. Well, let's find out from inside the camp, because Jack is with Gino Borsoli.
Yeah, I am indeed, as pit lane opens and the atmosphere goes up a notch here in Le Mans. Gino, great weekend for Jack so far. A good lap in qualifying to put himself in the mix. What would be a good result here?
Well, difficult to say, of course, because as you can imagine, the first corner is a tricky point all the time. But I'm happy because also the pace this morning was quite good. He did a really good job this morning qualifying. We don't need to think about something special. If we keep the same position, it's more than enough.
You mentioned the first corner. What do you think the vast majority of the riders will do? Will they activate the front device, the rear device? What will we see? Because it's such a challenge.
For sure it will be a tricky point because everybody complain about the front device. So we made some adjustment to let, let's say, the device go as soon as it touches the brake. But let's see, you know. As always here, nobody knows what's going on in the first corner. So I hope nothing happens for sure.
Absolutely. Thanks, Gino. Good luck.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Jack. Thanks to Gino Borsoli. Jack Miller has got a great recent record here in Le Mans, the 2021 winner, of course. Second he was in 2022 as well. This is in the Grand Prix, of course. And he was also a Moto3 winner all the way back in 2014, the 30-year-old Aussie. Just looking to steady the ship a little bit, having scored no points in the last 2 Grand Prix since that excellent 5th in Austin in Texas.
Underlining though what a good job Yamaha are doing. It's not just Quartararo who's up towards the front. Jack Miller on the middle of the 3rd row as we ride on board, then with Pecco Bagnaia coming towards the grid. It's Marc Marquez actually on the other factory Ducati, and just to underline what the rest are up against and why Sete Gibernau was so quick to pick Marc Marquez for Saturday afternoon success. He is still unbeaten in the sprints this season. He started 5 and he's won 5.
Yeah, and his pace on old tyres yesterday afternoon was pretty frightening, actually, to say the least. He was doing 130.7s on 18-lap-old rubber, which certainly over the longer distance tomorrow will play heavily in favour of Marc Marquez. This sprint is going to take place on a dry track. Tomorrow, we're not so sure, because there are some dodgy weather forecasts around for this part of northwest France. So could we have a full wet Grand Prix? Are we going to see a flag-to-flag battle? Just listen to the noise. Listen to the reception. That's for the 3rd time in the last 5 years. Fabio Quartararo, who is carrying the weight of a nation on those broad shoulders here this weekend, slots the factory Yamaha onto pole position. As we told you, back-to-back poles for the first time since mid-2021. I dread to think what the decibel level will be if Quartararo either wins the sprint or the Grand Prix here tomorrow, or maybe even both, because you'll hear the noise in Marseille.
I said earlier on, he'll be able to crowd surf all the way to Silverstone in a couple of weeks if he does the business here. Quartararo, having had the taste of it in Jerez, and he certainly was prepared to dish it out as well as take it when Marc Marquez tried to pass him in Jerez a couple of weeks ago. Of course, Marc Marquez got the jump off the line on Quartararo, and Fabio came straight back up the inside of him into turn 1. Quartararo certainly knows that his best chance of beating Marc Marquez in this sprint, arguably any chance of beating Marc Marquez, is to be ahead of him and to do the leading rather than the chasing.
Well, we've talked about what a massive home Grand Prix weekend it is for Quartararo and Johann Zarco, but it's also a huge weekend, biggest weekend of the season without question for the Red Bull KTM Tech 3 team, of course based in southern France, and they are enjoying life very much so right now thanks to the brilliance of Maverick Vinales. Can the Top Gun get himself in the medal battle in this sprint? Let's find out from the boss. Hervé Poncharal is with Jack.
Hervé, goes without saying, big weekend here. There's a big crowd as well cheering you on, and once again Maverick proving that Qatar was no fluke. He was fast there, fast in Jerez, and fast here once again. Can he fight for the podium?
This is a question I would like to answer with a definitive yes. We have the pace to be not bad. Honestly, to fight for a podium, when you see the two Marquez brothers, Fabio, honestly it's going to be difficult. But I think he's 5th on the grid. A top 5 would make us really, really happy. You always learn a lot in the sprint for the main race. So this is the whole thing about this race. But for sure, you know, a podium would be beautiful here, as you mentioned, you know, in Le Mans. Today is a beautiful weather. Tomorrow is going to be a bit more tricky, I believe, weather-wise. And the crowd is huge. And yeah. A podium here would be something very special.
Just a word on the atmosphere as well. A Frenchman on pole position looking to win tomorrow for the first time in a very, very long time. This is so far been a very special weekend.
You know, the crowd and the public here is amazing. And recently they've been a bit sad to see their two representatives not fighting in France. Still, they come, huge crowd every year breaking a new record. But to give them a pole position and a potential fight in front by Fabio is something extra that we are all very happy to give them, and I think the French crowd deserve that pole position.
Thanks, Hervé. Have a good race.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jack. Vive la France, as Hervé Poncharal would say as we run through the grid. Your front row is Quartararo and Marc and Alex Marquez. Aldeguer, Vinales and Bagnaia on the second row of the grid. A few selected names further back. Marco Bezzecchi on the factory Aprilia, his best qualifying of the season to date as he gets to grips with that RSGP. He's 7th on that third row with Miller and Morbidelli. Ralph Fernandez, first time he's been inside the top 10 at the end of Q2 since the opening Grand Prix in Buriram. He's on that 4th row with Johann Zarco and Pedro Acosta. Well, I was just glancing through the grid, Lewis. I just took my eye away from the screen. It looked like, I guess, everybody hard front, soft rear tyre for this sprint.
Yeah, that's the preferred pick for this afternoon. Of course, potentially they may go a step harder on the rear tomorrow. That is if, of course, they're running dry weather slicks in tomorrow's Grand Prix. We'll cross that bridge when we come to it and focus on what will be a dry weather sprint. And penny for the thoughts of Fabio Quartararo right now, sitting on pole position. It's somewhere he sat before in MotoGP at Le Mans, so it's not a brand new experience for him. But of course, the two previous times he's been on pole position at the French Grand Prix have been in front of largely empty grandstands during the global pandemic. And this time, though, he's got 100,000 of his compatriots watching on, including a two-time Formula One runner-up and motorsport legend Jackie Ickx on the grid.
Yeah, he's always been rapid in qualifying here, hasn't he, Quartararo? But he has never really been able to fully convert it into sort of stellar results in Le Mans. That third place in 2021 is his only podium, actually, in 10 home Grand Prix. Now, he was very, very happy with Fabio Quartararo's awesome pole lap in Jerez 2 weeks ago. I'm sure he's got an even bigger smile on his face right now. What a time to be part of the factory Yamaha camp. Let's hear from the boss, Paolo Pavesio, who joins Jack.
Yeah, Paolo with a big smile on his face. There's a large expectant crowd here, Paolo. What will Fabio have learnt from 2 weeks ago that he'll put into play today?
Yeah, I think first of all it's impressive to see what we are seeing, and I think for the spectator it's fantastic to have Fabio doing what he is doing. Finally, in the last week we start to put together all the pieces, and this is what makes me happy. Let's see, today race, tomorrow race, but we are not here by chance. It's a journey. We're putting pieces together, and we know we are not there yet, but it's super important to start to show and get motivation through this.
Good luck.
Thank you so much.
Yes, Fabio Quartararo working wonders on that factory Yamaha. Can he put up another great fight against the Ducatis here this afternoon? Thanks as always to Paolo Pavesio there joining Jack down on the grid. Well, the second of the factory Ducatis, we've got one on the front row, which is a very familiar feeling in 2025, as Marc Marquez has qualified top two in all 6 Grand Prix so far. A little bit further back of the second row is Pecco Bagnaia, which you have to say, Lewis, is a little bit worrying, a little bit alarming, given the fact that with the sprint spec Ducati GP25, Pecco Bagnaia has had his struggles.
Well, if you look back to Qatar, when he qualified 11th on the grid, he only made it as far as 8th and was battling with Jorge Martin at one stage, wasn't he, on his return from injury. So the previous history on board that Ducati GP25, or whatever you want to call it, in sprint spec has not been particularly good for Pecco Bagnaia. What will also concern him, quite obviously, is the gap between himself and his teammate Marc Marquez in terms of lap time. Yes, there are 4 places between them on the grid, but half a second plus, 6/10 to be exact, between Marquez and Bagnaia. And Bagnaia trying to ride this Ducati in a new way, recognising that the lovely feeling he's had in previous years on board that factory Ducati is not going to return anytime soon, so he's having to try and tackle it from a different angle, and at the moment he's not getting any success from it.
So our drone hovers above what's already a very tense grid here in Le Mans as the atmosphere builds up to 3 p.m. local time. Will be lights out for Tissot sprint number 6 of 2025. As you mentioned, Ralph Fernandez, who has had his critics, it's fair to say, so far in 2025. Well, he said a positive post-race test on the Monday in Jerez sort of has given him a bit of hope, a lot more comfort, a lot more confidence on that Aprilia RSGP, and he's putting it to good use because, as we mentioned, he has qualified in 10th place ahead of Johan Zarco and Pedro Acosta on that 4th row of the grid as Morbidelli gets himself primed and ready for sprint action here in Le Mans.
Just a few minutes away now from the start of the warm-up lap, and the crowd are getting warmed up. You can hear them in the background as the circuit announcer here whips them into a frenzy. They don't need any whipping up into a frenzy. Qualifying certainly did the job for them in that respect, and they will be roaring Fabio Quartararo on in that long drag race round turns 1 and 2 and up to Dunlop chicane.
Bezzecchi still has not found himself qualifying higher than the 3rd row of the grid so far on the factory Aprilia, but this is his best qualifying of 2025 to date. Of course, it was here 2 years ago where the 26-year-old Italian won the Grand Prix in what was our 1,000th Grand Prix. What a milestone that was for Bezzecchi. In fact, he ran away with it, didn't he? Won by nearly 5 seconds from 7th on the grid.
I had to drop a position during that race, didn't he, as well? Bezzecchi in a class of his own. There was plenty of drama on that particular afternoon. It's going to take something even more dramatic to bring Bezzecchi into contention here this afternoon, although he and that Aprilia generally go better in race trim than they do in qualifying. If that continues, then Bezzecchi might be in his way towards the top 6.
Is this going to be another early battle between Quartararo and Marc Marquez, as it was in Jerez 2 weeks ago? Quartararo really did tough it out, didn't he, on the brakes on that factory Yamaha. A much shorter run to the first corner in Jerez than it is here in Le Mans. This gives you an actual indication of just how long that run is to the first corner as we rode briefly on board the BMW safety car.
To underline the point that Jack Appleyard was making when he spoke to Gino Borsoi, generally, of course, the start devices, they disengage when you grab the brakes hard for the first corner. But, of course, you need to get around the long and fast turn 1 and turn 2 before you even get to the big braking zone of Dunlop. So that will be a question in the riders' minds in terms of what kind of configuration of bike they leave the grid with.
Yeah, as we saw this morning with the eagle-eyed Bradley Smith, there were a few riders going through that turn 1. The rear radar device wasn't disengaging. Alex Marquez then protecting a 1-point lead in the MotoGP World Championship ahead of this sprint. Marc Marquez qualified top 2 in all 6 so far this season. It's Fabio Quartararo on pole in France.